So to begin, I guess let's if we reference back the website where I posted the original. Here I described the components for deploying earned value and the attributes necessary. I talked about the phases development in detail. This directly coincides with a presentation I did a couple of times last year. One was this shows your deliverables over time for an EPC project through construction. It was called rolling wave planning, and I also provide that. I've also provided a project wheel that shows the phases, the stage gates and the phases, and then down below the associated deliverables for that phase, and also the flow chart that's represented here, the deliverables through construction. So they all kind of go hand in hand. I've also talked about rules of credit. It's important for earned value. And then, of course, my example in P6, the activities, deliverables, if you will, and the distribution graphs, of course. And in summary, I didn't really provide any demonstration, which is what I'm doing today. So moving forward into my P6 file here, you can see all my deliverables are there by discipline. Kind of very simple. I call it a fragment because I use it for multiple projects, multiple units. I'm going to open my layout, and I'm going to open a slightly different layout where I've organized it by an activity code. This activity code, you can see they're all collapsed, and beneath it are activities. See here. So if I expand all, you'll see that the activities associated with that deliverable fall under that deliverable type. And I'll show you the code there. Okay, deliverable, process flow diagram. And I created a set of deliverables types by discipline. And I associated each activity with that deliverable type. So in essence, the activities are acting as a rule of credit. So I added this estimated weight column here. It's out of P6. It's part of the top-down estimation functionality. I added it through here under General. And I added a value to it that represented the man hours associated with doing a deliverable or a document set of deliverables. So I'm using them as a weight factor so that I can add man hours later when I resource load the schedule. And I use top-down estimation. Once that's applied, before that, I have to show you one more thing. Under WBS, I also weighted the disciplines according to the budgets. This is important because the system takes the estimated weight of the WBS first, and by default it leaves it at 1, so you may want to check that. Then it'll add the distribution of hours across. Let me go back. It'll add the distribution of hours here. You see, I've already done this according to the WBS first. Then it takes the hours beneath that WBS and uses the estimated weight here to distribute those man hours across. So it's a weighting of a weighting. It's a weight factor of a weight factor. Okay. Moving on to a separate layout. I use here, it's kind of the same, but I use collapse bars to show the schedule, to show the green and reds, critical and non-critical, ongoing. And I have a stacked histogram, right? So if you go to top-down estimation, now if you load those hours in that and apply, those hours get distributed back to the activities. I only do this the first time once. It's really what it's for. It's a fragment, and then I reload it. But once everything is loaded and you baseline, then you can start to progress the work. So here I've got my curve, cumulative curve, and up top you'll see the periodic values here, the planned periodic values, and you'll see up top the cumulative values and earned values, which is blank because I haven't earned anything, or actuals for that matter. And I use stored period performance to capture the actual periodic performances. Okay, it's a whole another video, another conversation, but I emulate percentages by taking the full value as a denominator minus 2 decimals. And you can see here, this is just on top is the activity usage spreadsheet. Below, you have to do the same math. You have to take the denominator minus 2 decimal points. So it has to divide by that to emulate a percentage. You see here is man hours. I'm going to convert that and it'll look like percentages. And I have the symbol of the unit of measure. So if you expand below, I organize it by WBS and deliverable type. So another view that you could apply when you're performing your work. And you can see here that process is 11% of the job, or 11% of the entire project. Mechanical is about 13%, so forth and so on. You can pause the video to look at it further. But here you can see that this is just the same division down at the increment using the budget minus 2 decimals and it's emulating a percentage. Excuse me, throat's kind of scratchy. Okay, so going to this other layout here, I like this layout a lot. I use it, called EAC. It's got my planned man hours, earned man hours, actual man hours, my remaining man hours, and my variances in man hours, my earned percent, planned percent, actual percent, SPI, CPI. I show my total float, budget at completion, estimate at completion, estimate to complete. And you'll notice that the activities here I renamed them. I've taken them out of the attributes and then I renamed them. Right, so activity percent complete, if you notice this one here, and it's not a natural column or attribute. What I've had to do is I've created a global change to emulate a percentage of actuals, right? So, but first of all, let me close this out, close it, go back. I created a user-defined field here as a number for activities, of course. And then I created a global change. And under this percentage here, I've taken my actual labor units, which is cumulative, and my budgeted labor units, and I've created the division. I may have to go back and possibly multiply times 100 so that it looks as a whole number. It's possible. I haven't actualized anything yet here. But if I do, it's easy. You go back and change your global change. But in this layout, you'll find that there is the list of deliverables and the AKA rules of credit. If it applies to that deliverable, it's emulating it in a way. So under this layout, I can actualize, I can update, and I can review my performance all in one shot. Plus, below out here, I have the usage profile. Make sure that your denominator's there, and Also make sure that your symbol, unit of measure, to make it visible, if you do this and it doesn't show up, you have to go to user preferences. Make sure you show your unit label, okay? That's where it shows up. In case you don't find it, that's where it shows up when you put that symbol in that box right here. That's where it'll be applied. So this is one of my favorite layouts. It's practical, it's useful, and if you have a methodology that's consistent and you establish your rules of credit and how they're applied, it works really well. So going back to my deliverable layout, I'm going to show you how I made these bars, in case you're wondering. Some of you may already know. So to show these bars collapsed, all you have to do is go to your bars and first I changed the thickness of the bars, and then I showed the bar when collapsed. Okay, and then I took my summary bar and I went ahead and modified it so that it looks different than it typically does. But the important thing is to remember that here to have your bar labels off, because when you do collapse them, those labels will show up when it's collapsed and looks really messy. At least this way it looks clean. The bars show up, critical, non-critical. And also I typically add my percent complete, which is performance, is what I use to show performance of work. So I usually add that to my layout as I progress the schedule. So you can see here, useful layouts here, methodology. It's up to you guys. If you want to emulate what I do, then that's great. But I'm going to rename this, by the way, here to earned percent, and I'm going to put it in the center. Hit OK. So now it says earned percent, but it's really the performance percent complete. I just didn't want to take up a lot of space, or I wanted to be clear about what that column is.